Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday night live stream for studentloanjustice.org. It is Monday, April 18th, which I am just about to change on our little monitor there. Hold on a minute. April 18th. Hope everybody's weekend went well. Hope everyone had a great Easter Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This week that we are in right now could and should be the week upon which our legislation is sort of decided. It's being marked up. Our bill, S-2598, from Judiciary Chairman Senator Dick Durbin, the bill that will return limited, but nonetheless, bankruptcy protections to federal student loans is being marked up. I say limited because there's a 10-year waiting period, so the debt has to be older than 10 years old. So it's not perfect, but it's good. It's a huge step forward. For those of you who are new to the group, we are the oldest and largest and pretty much only true grassroots group fighting only and absolutely for student loan justice. We've been doing this for 17 years, ladies and gentlemen, and only tonight, April 18th, Monday, can I tell you that we are literally knocking on the door of finally getting some actual relief. 17 years, guys. It's been a long time. Now, here's the thing that you want to understand. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. It's a terrible thing to have to do. But not having the threat, the leverage of the threat of bankruptcy lies at the core of this problem. For the first 15 years of our existence, we fought only and absolutely for the return of bankruptcy protections to all student loans, federal student loans and private student loans. Obviously, we're still doing that, but as of March 2020, we are now calling for the cancellation of all federally owned student loans as well. And that's like 87% of all student loan debt. The reason we upped our game to include loan cancellation is very simple. The lending system is catastrophically failed. And quite frankly, the pandemic is the nail in the coffin. Even before this pandemic, 64.3% of everyone, that's nearly 2/3 of all borrowers, were not making payments on their loans. And even when you discount the people who were in school on a grace deferment, in a sort of a grace period, in school or in grace, so they kind of didn't have to pay. So when you discount them, it's still 57% of all borrowers were not paying on their student loans. Even before the pandemic, 80% of all borrowers were underwater. So either they weren't paying, and that's the 57% I said, or they were paying and sometimes paying through the nose. And yet still their loan balance was going up. You know, we have people on this group. One member I know originally borrowed $26,000, right? Kind of whatever. That's less than average today, but this was back in the 90s, I think, or 80s. This person has paid back nearly $100,000 on this $26,000 loan. And the kicker is that this person still owes $132,000. It's nonsense. It's crazy, ridiculous. When you take bankruptcy protections away from a lending instrument, you weaponize it and you give the lenders a license to steal. That is exactly what's happened. And now the lending system, for all intents and purposes, by all rational measures and metrics, it's failed. It's catastrophically failed. There's no saving it. You know, before the pandemic, I said 2/3 of everyone was not paying. Here now today, almost nobody is paying. And people have had 2 years to rethink their lives. And I'm here to tell you that whenever they garner the courage to try and turn this lending system back on, very few people will pay. Very few. Like probably not even 20%. In fact, I think closer to 15%. So when 85% of everyone isn't paying on a loan, does that loan even exist anymore? No, it doesn't. Student loans, federal student loans, certainly in this country finished. They're done. And anybody who is fighting to keep them alive is fighting a losing battle. And there's nothing that they can do or say, nothing that I can do or say for that matter, nothing that anybody can do or say to prevent that from not being true. There's no way to keep this lending system alive. It's done. It's toast. It's finished. Put a fork in it. So, hey, if you're watching us on Facebook or Twitter, and if I can see your comments, then I will gladly respond to them. There we are. I'm looking on Facebook now, looking on Twitter now. Where is it? Okay, hold on a minute. So, yeah, guys, this is the week. Now, the most important policy point I have to tell you tonight is that whatever you think about bankruptcy, and trust me, nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. It sucks. It's a terrible thing to have to do. It's unpleasant. It's stigmatizing, all those things. Whatever your feelings are about bankruptcy, we have got to get the threat of bankruptcy back on our side. Because as long as the threat, the leverage of bankruptcy remains gone from these loans, we are not going to see meaningful student loan cancellation from President Biden. As long as bankruptcy is gone, Biden could hold a press conference tomorrow and say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've thought it over and I'm now going to cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt, which is, if you believe the media, that's the most we can expect. Even if that happened and the band would cheer and there'd be champagne corks flying and parades and all that kind of thing, even if Joe Biden did that, the up to $50,000, the up to part, yeah, that's where the devil is. The devil is in that little detail there. The bureaucrats, the bad people at the Department of Education would use that up to make sure that almost no one gets almost anything. You get 13 grand, you get 12 grand, you earn too much, you get nothing. Yeah, you're in default, so you get nothing. You didn't fill out your form correctly, you get nothing. That's how that's going to go. This is how the Department of Education has operated since almost my whole life, but back to 1995, certainly, when they first started introducing these loan cancellation gimmicks like income contingent repayment, and then later the income-based repayment, which many of you are familiar with, public service loan forgiveness, pay, repay, all those things are cruel jokes where cumulatively 99 point something, like 8 or 7 or something % of everyone gets kicked out of those programs before getting a dime of their loans forgiven. And oh, by the way, they get disqualified and kicked to the curb and left usually owing far more than had they never even tried in the first place. So any sort of loan cancellation gimmick that they might roll out, as long as the threat of bankruptcy is gone, that's how that's going to go. Not to be trusted, not to be believed. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a great bill out right now, S2598. It would do all those things that I said for debts that's more than 10 years old. It's not for federal, it's not for private loans. If you have private loans, there's another bill, HR 4907. I strongly recommend you fight as hard as you can for that bill if you have fully private loans, that is loans that are not owned or guaranteed by the federal government. So if you have a SoFi loan, for example, that would be a private loan. And the dirtiest trick that the banks ever played was getting bankruptcy taken away from these private student loans, I might add. And if you have private loans, I really feel for you. Unlike federally owned loans, which can be canceled by executive order without needing a dime from the Treasury, without needing congressional approval, without adding even a penny to the debt, private loans are very difficult for the government to cancel. There's pretty much no way they can do it. They pretty much have to buy the loan from the lender and then cancel the loan. And they probably have to pay more than full book value for the loan. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, guys. Private loans are difficult. I know refinancing into SoFi and some of these other private companies looked like a pretty smart thing to do for years. Not looking so smart now. And if you're in that situation, hey man, I really feel I really empathize with you. The best we can do is to get bankruptcy returned to private student loans. And that will help, because remember, whether you would ever or never file for bankruptcy is not important. Just having the threat of bankruptcy is what is important. And that goes for all loans. There's a very good reason the founding fathers called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution ahead of the power to declare war and raise an army. And this student loan violation of their wisdom is exactly it. These loans have been weaponized. Now, maybe the most hopeful thing that I'll tell you tonight is that we will see meaningful student loan cancellation from President Biden when we get the credible threat of bankruptcy returned to us. And very few people, perhaps no one, will even have to file. That's critical. It's key. It's not the going out and filing that we're fighting for. It's getting the threat back. As soon as we get bankruptcy returned, Joe Biden and all the people at the Department of Education, everybody out there is going to be like, the jig is up. The scam is over. Joe Biden's pretty much going to have to cancel loans meaningfully, widely, broadly, maybe even totally, federally owned loans, when we get the threat of bankruptcy returned. So our bill, S-2598, is just so very important. So important. Whether you would ever or never file for bankruptcy, if you want student loan cancellation totally, like I think a lot of people do, maybe you just want some kind of a break on interest or some other fair negotiated settlement. That's only going to happen when we get the threat of bankruptcy back. So no matter what your situation is, if you have student loans and you don't like them, you need to be helping us fight for S-2598. It's so important. And before I go to the questions, if you forget everything I say tonight, the most important thing you need to know is that if you want to help, then go to our website, studentloanjustice.org, and do at least a month worth of our daily actions. It's very simple. It's mostly Twitter stuff. It takes almost no time at all to do. This bill, everything rests on this bill, guys. I'm serious. If we don't get bankruptcy back, then whatever loan cancellation we see Biden roll out is going to be just worthless. It's going to be garbage. Finally going to the comments here. And sorry, I did a very brief live stream last night. So hopefully I'll be able to get to most or all of your questions here tonight. Hey, Leslie Fishman is with us here, I see. Tonight. As is Kelly Smith. How you doing, folks? Good to see you all. We have, holy cow, we've already got like about 20 or 25 comments. So Vanji says, Vanji says, I was told by Grassley staff that they are in recess this week. Yeah, according to, and see, I don't know if that's even meaningful. It doesn't really matter to us. The conversations are being held right now. Well, maybe they're doing it on Zoom or whatever they're doing. Last week and this week, according to our very well-placed people at the Senate. So according to them, after this week, they should have hopefully a solid answer for us on this bill. And I can't say anything more than that, but I can only say that this week and last week are just exceptionally important. So that's from the horse's mouth, guys. Hey, Leslie Fishman says, been waiting for you and this stream. Oh, good, Leslie. You know, a lot of people have come to really enjoy our live streams, and I'm thrilled about that. I think it's less about me and more about Ed, because Ed doesn't talk so fast, and he's more of a relaxing dude. But anyways, I'm glad you're here. Vanji says, your deployment in this battle is almost – oh, hold on a minute. Your deployment in this battle is almost an adult. That's right. If this battle was a kid, it would have its driver's license by now and would be out probably drinking at night, I think. As I was. Yeah, that's right. And speaking of battles, guys, in all seriousness, I would urge everybody out there to get a Twitter account. I'm just saying. We are taking a lot of heat from the bad guys out there on the internet these days. We have started, we're calling it a Twitter army. It's on Facebook, by the way. So if you go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/SLJ group, or actually maybe even better, if you just Google student loan justice or SLJ Twitter army, you can find us on Facebook. Join us. We've got over 100 members now. Hopefully we'll have a few thousand or so in short order. We're using this group to go to battle with the bad guys on Facebook. And the battle is happening. We have opposition, guys, if you didn't notice. Now, number one, we got this battle. We've already won this fight. The lending system is done. It's finished. It's toast. So we got this. But having said that, there's a lot of bad people who are paid in who knows all kinds of nefarious ways who really, really, really want this lending system to continue. We are the largest untethered voting bloc in U.S. history, I'm pretty sure. Like 40 million people, by my best guess, 40 million distressed people who are lying awake at night about their student loans. That's 40 out of the 45 million, by the way. They should be on our side, and they are on our side. And if they knew us, they would be shoulder to shoulder fighting with us. But having said that, there's some bad guys out there, and that includes, I hate to say it, people on both the right and the left. Actually, I don't hate to say that. We are a fiercely nonpartisan group. So it's kind of expected that people from the establishment on both sides would be coming after us. So we're a fiercely nonpartisan group. Historically, in Congress, the Republicans have tended to oppose us, and that continues to today as well. However, that's changing. Our bill is bipartisan. Our bill has more Republicans than Democrats on it right now. Interestingly, John Cornyn and Josh Hawley are the two senators on the bill. Dick Durbin is the one Democrat. And by the way, it doesn't matter how many co-sponsors are on a bill. I know we talk about co-sponsoring all the time. It literally has zero impact on whether the bill is going to pass or not. The bill is very well positioned. Senator Durbin is the Senate Majority Whip, I believe. Yes, he is. He's also the head of the Judiciary Committee. And given that he already has two Republicans co-sponsored on this bill, he's got all the votes he needs to get it out of committee. And were this bill put to a floor Senate vote today, I am quite confident. In fact, I'm quite confident the bill would pass tomorrow. And I think we actually have all the votes that we need in the House as well. And even with a 50-50 split in Congress, even still, we've got the votes. We've got Republicans. This is not a partisan issue, by the way. So, hey, Leslie Fishman says, that's an effing travesty. The whole student loan problem is one huge travesty, Leslie. Leslie says, can't pay hardly. Inflation has beholden the average person. Yeah, inflation. Glad you mentioned inflation. So here's the thing that you need to know. Canceling right now, our opposition has seized upon the inflation boogeyman, and now they're claiming, oh no, you can't cancel student loans because it's going to increase inflation, exacerbate inflation. That's completely false. And we wrote a paper recently, and if you go to our studentloanjustice.medium.com platform, you can see the very top article addresses this exact question. So as you're going forward helping us fight, and anybody says, oh, canceling student loans is going to cause inflation, you can put this article in front of their faces. The inflation that we're seeing right now, ladies and gentlemen, is supply driven. It's supply chain stuff. It's fertilizer shortages in Russia. It's gas shortages. It's the price of gas, which is leaking over into every other part of the economy. That's what's causing this inflation. It's not like there's a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of money chasing around too few goods. No, it's not that. Canceling student loans will not exacerbate inflation. What canceling student loans will do, And we proved this, by the way. It'll free up something like $400 a month in the pocket of the average borrower, $400 a month. Now, with inflation running at 8.5%, it turns out that the monthly expenses of the average household go up by about $500 a month because of inflation. So canceling student loans is going to allow people to do stuff like pay rent, eat, pay their food bills, and stuff like that. Anybody's claiming that it's going to hurt inflation is completely full of you know what they're full of. So that's a great point. And by the way, guys, the haters say like one of like 4 things. And we've pretty much written an article for every one of those things that they say. By the way, canceling student loans will not benefit the wealthy. That's probably the biggest lie being told right now. And again, if you go to our studentloanjustice.medium.com platform, you can see an article near the top that says, no, canceling student loans will not benefit the wealthy. And it won't benefit the wealthy. Unlike PPP loans, the large majority of student loans are owned by people in the bottom 80% earnings bracket. PPP loans, the large majority of those loans are owned by the top 20% of earners. So if you want to talk about a regressive policy, PPP loans are a regressive policy. By the way, PPP loans all added to the national debt and required money to be drawn from the Treasury. Canceling student loans requires not one thin dime to be drawn from the Treasury, not one penny to be added to the debt. So remember that. Anybody goes, pay your student loan, tell them to pay your PPP loan or whatever. So we've got quite a few more comments here. Hey, Doug Rustfin's here from great state of Indiana. How are you? Hey, Terry Dodd, how are you tonight? I'm hanging on the door, ready to break it down. It's funny how you did this live stream tonight while the press secretary told the podcast Save America that a decision will be made on whether Biden will extend the pause again or cancel, if altogether, before the August deadline. Let me see what else Mr. Terry Dodd has to say. I'm not buying it. Oh, okay. We have a hater in the audience. Is that what this is, Terry? Jen Psaki and the White House have been saying, we're going to monitor the situation and we're going to make a determination on what we'll do in a few months. They've been doing that every like 3, 4, 5 months as they have kicked this can down the road. And everybody on this group who has student loans knows exactly what I'm talking about. They have been playing us for fools. Before this election, Joe Biden, and there's ample evidence of this in the public record, Joe Biden was saying things like, if you went to a public college or an HBCU and you earn less than $125,000 a year, I will eliminate, Joe Biden said, your student loan debt. Joe Biden said that before the election, Terry, before the election. In close states like Georgia, Michigan, what do you think tipped the scales in those very close elections? It was student loan borrowers. Georgia is the worst state in the nation. The state budget of Georgia is $48 billion. The people of Georgia, which, by the way, Terry Dodd, was started as a refuge for imprisoned debtors. The people of Georgia owe $82 billion in federal student loans, mostly federal student loans, $82 billion. The state of Georgia is being absolutely wrecked by these loans. Or maybe you mean that you don't buy what Biden was saying, Terry, because if you're saying what Joe Biden is saying, well, then you're in very good company. So, yeah, we're not buying it. We're not going to be fooled. Joe Biden could and should have canceled these loans on day one. And quite frankly, I've got a little bit of sympathy, or sympathy. I understand this problem from the White House perspective. They have no clue what they're going to do. Their man, Joe Biden, has a long history of making fake promises that he can't deliver on. I follow Joe Biden all over Iowa, by the way, and I heard him say a whole bunch of things that sounded really good until you actually like read the tape of what he exactly said. So he is a very gifted politician at giving people false hope, and that is precisely what he did with 40 of the 45 million student loan borrowers out here in the country. And if you include private student loans, it's more than that. If you include private student loans, we have somewhere around 55, if not maybe even 60, if you count cosigners, 60 million people with student loans. And as I said, 80% of them, even before the pandemic, were losing sleep over their loans. Hey, Doug Grussman. Hello, Kelly Smith. How are you, Kelly? Kelly, one of our very long-time members from way back in the day, 2007, I believe. Hey, Leslie, my lifeline today. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad, Leslie. I'm glad you enjoy these live streams. I enjoy doing them, actually. And by the way, I love the tough questions. If you've got some very tough questions that you want to put to us, I love that. You know, we went on Fox News a couple weeks ago. We love the tough questions. They don't get asked enough. We've been sharpening this sword for many years or even decades. And we can go into the lion's den like Fox News or News Nation or Newsmax or OANN or many other places, and we can knock them down like it's batting practice. Leslie Fishman says $50,000 means jack to me. Yeah, even if Biden did a up to $50,000 gimmick, and even if they actually did cancel actually $50,000, that would be an insult to many of the people on this group. Typically older people, by the way, who owe well in several hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have people who owe up to $1 million despite having borrowed a tiny fraction of that many years ago. $50,000 does nothing to help the worst hurt people. And I didn't mention this, but most student loan borrowers, by the way, are older, not younger. People over the age of 50 outnumber people under the age of 25 with student loan debt, and they owe far, far more despite having borrowed far, far less. These are the people who, like this person I mentioned earlier, borrowed $26,000. She's repaid $100,000, still owes $132,000 on a $26,000 loan. It's ridiculous. $50,000 isn't going to do anything for these people. And, you know, I'm going to stop right there because it won't be $50,000, people. It'll be up to $50,000. Every lawyer watching this knows exactly what up to means. It means you ain't getting nothing. It'll mean almost nothing for almost everyone. Over the past however many years, 99% of everybody who thought they were getting their loans canceled found out the hard way. Not only did they not get their loans canceled, they got disqualified out of whatever program they were trying for and left owing far more than had they never even tried in the first place. Kelly Smith says, I need a bankruptcy option. Some people do. You know, some people do, Kelly. I ain't going to lie. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we finally get the right returned. But yeah, and to most people out there, I would hope that the day after they actually return bankruptcy protections, the president goes, the jig's up, guys. We can't do this any longer. And I hope that they cancel. Quite frankly, if I were president, obviously, I would cancel every nickel of the debt. Because truly, guys, if 80% of the people were never going to be able to repay their loans even before the pandemic, is it really worth keeping the whole damn stupid monster alive just so you can collect from 20% of the borrowers? That makes no sense. You might as well just be done with it. Call it stimulus. Put it on the shelf next to PPP loans or whatever. Call it that, and figure out a better way to finance colleges in this country. Find out a way that doesn't wreck the people that they educate, doesn't wreck the country. And by the way, if you happen to be Republican, you should be on our side. You should be on our side. This is the worst big government. Some would say socialistic. We don't say that, but some would say that. Certainly college enriching lending scam in the history of our country. And there's nothing that any true conservative can say good about this lending scam. And if you look at the top 10, or should I say the bottom 10, in other words, the 10 worst states in terms of the average student loan debt versus the average wages, we're talking states like Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Missouri. In fact, it's like one big fist right in the southeastern United States. It's a contiguous block. I said Texas. It actually doesn't include, Texas is like number 11 or something. But if you look at the top 20, 17 of the bottom 20 states are also red, historically Republican states. So there's no good reason for any Republican anywhere to be fighting for this lending system. So I say shame on anyone who does that, particularly if you happen to be a legislator in a state like North Carolina, Indiana, as I said, Texas, Florida, all those other states. Virginia Fox, for example, and Senator Richard Burr, for example, ought to be ashamed of themselves. Ashamed. They are serving their states up to this big government lending monstrosity, to the massive expense of their state, and they're doing it against their own people. And here's a very interesting statistic, which again, you will see borne out on our Medium platform, studentloanjustice.medium.com. Most student loan borrowers are either Republican or independent. I kid you not. Most people think of student loans and they go, yeah, liberal, young snowflakes. All of that is wrong. If you look at Gallup polling data, if you look at Pew Research data going back to 2014, you will see that there's a roughly even split. And in fact, in recent years, it's tended to be more Republican than Democrat in student loan borrowers, or at least in people who have gone to college, or people who either graduated or didn't graduate from college. Everybody who's been to college, 50-50 split between Republicans and independents and Democrats. And in recent years, that has tended more to the right. So these Republicans in Congress, like those that I just mentioned, and quite a few others, quite frankly, Tom Cotton out of Arkansas, another one of the terrible states, they ought to be ashamed of themselves. And quite frankly, their people should be asking them the very tough questions. Hey, Leslie says, I need a break on totalitarianism. Jobs require lucrative degrees for Medicare jobs. I'm not sure what that even means, Leslie, but I do catch your the one point I can discern there is that you have to have a college degree for everything these days. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like 75 years ago, you could show up to a hospital and within about a month or a month and a half, you'd be a nurse. That's kind of how that went. Today, you pretty much have to have a master's degree to be a nurse. Teaching, same thing. Well, maybe you need, I'm not so sure. The point is, the stuff that you need a degree for these days is overwhelming and ridiculous, and it's quite frankly stupid. And anyways, that's a little bit outside of our jurisdiction. But Doug Russman says the Twitter Army Blitz will only work with the help of the whole SLJ army that we have. You're right, Doug. You know, I lie awake at night often. We've got over 1 million people in this group now. We've got 1.1 million people on our petition nearly. We've got a couple 100,000 people across our other platforms. And if everybody was doing even 5 minutes worth of effort a day, we would overwhelm every switchboard on Capitol Hill every day. We could overwhelm every media outlet. We could overwhelm every Twitter account that's even mentioned student loans. We could overwhelm all of these people. But on an average day, what I see is that probably only a couple thousand people are doing anything. And I could be wrong on that, but some days are better than others, certainly. But we need way more people helping, guys. If you think you can wait and watch and worry and eat popcorn and sit on the sidelines and somebody else is going to do your work for you, you're wrong. That's never worked. It will never work. And we will be buried by the bad guys if you think that you can be lazy. You can't. You need to get off your ass and you need to help us. You're not better than us. these are your loans. This is your problem, and we need you. And that's no bullshit right there. Pardon my French. And by the way, it's not only Republicans that we're taking flack from lately. I know I tend to dwell on them a little bit. Interestingly, we're taking a lot of opposition from people who at least claim to be liberals on Twitter lately. And quite frankly, it's pretty spooky. I don't know what's behind it. It could be a completely fake ops type thing. It's pretty clear that these people are paid. But whatever. I mean, to me, that's a good sign. It just only shows how truly nonpartisan we are. We don't care about D's and R's. We care about getting rid of this poisonous, dangerous, weaponized lending system. And we step on a lot of toes on the right. And quite frankly, there's some not very good people on the left as well. You know, the colleges they love this lending system. So they have been putting their thumb very quietly on the scales against us for many years, and shame on them for that. Big shame. There's a lot of shame and blame to go around on this problem, by the way, and it goes across both aisles, ladies and gentlemen. But just over the past couple of weeks or month, we've seen these people claiming to be liberals or Democrats or something. They kind of look like DNC operatives in more recent days, but we've seen a lot of people come out of the woodwork to try and oppose us, like mostly on Twitter. And their arguments are incoherent and sometimes babbling, and they bring in the kitchen sink. They try and bring in every other issue under the sun. They say just hilariously false things about us. They will never admit when they tell a lie, even if they're presented with irrefutable evidence. Like yesterday, some guy was saying Joe Biden never promised to cancel your student loans. So we put the article and the exact quote in his face, and even still, he would not admit that he was wrong. So these people lie, and they have no problem doing it, apparently. I don't know who's paying them, maybe the DNC. I don't know what's going on, but there is definitely a cadre, maybe the banks. You know, maybe the banks are trying to push people, particularly student loan borrowers, away from the Democrats. And so they're using these very caustic, vile people to push normal people like us away from the Democrats by trying to do this weird ninja fakery where they're trying to say that Joe Biden never canceled your loans. And what do you expect? No, but you better vote for the Democrats, though. You better vote for the Democrats. And yeah, guys, we're not buying any of that nonsense. As I said, we are a fiercely nonpartisan group. We were very tough on Donald Trump for 2016 to 2020. We were very hard on Barack Obama from 2008 through 2016. And we point the finger where the finger needs to point, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you're a D or an R, we don't care. We will come after whoever is screwing us. And right now, Joe Biden has screwed us massively. And if the Democratic establishment thinks that they can pretend that we're going to vote for them in the continued absence of bankruptcy protections from student loans, and as long as Joe Biden hasn't canceled any kind of meaningful amount of federal student loans, they can pretend all they want, and they are going to be absolutely wrecked in the midterms. People aren't stupid. We know when we've been lied to. And there's nothing that any Democratic operative can do or say to make many, perhaps even most people on our group certainly rush out to the polls and vote for a Democrat. Like, we did that, and we delivered you Georgia, and we delivered you Michigan, and we delivered you all these other Pennsylvania, many other states in the last presidential election. So the time has come for Joe Biden to uphold his end of the bargain. And it's not looking good. It's really not looking good. So what I tell all, and I know we've got a lot of very proud and good people out there who are very proud Democrats, and even you are disappointed. I know if you're on this group, you're disappointed in Biden, just like all of us. But I would tell anybody who wants to defend the Democrats and wants to somehow salvage victory for them this coming fall, The one way, and in fact, in my view, is, I mean, really, from what I can tell, the only way that the Democrats are going to have a chance at maintaining their majority in the House, in the Senate, after November 9th, I think, or 8th, is to cancel all federally owned student loans. And obviously, bankruptcy has got to be returned to all student loans, not just federally owned student loans, all student loans. That is what the Democrats would do if they want to retain power. Because right now, as we speak tonight, there are about 40 million pissed off people. Half of them are Democrat and a good chunk of them are independent. A very large chunk of them voted for Biden and the Democrats in the last election. They are pissed. They are pissed. And I don't think many of them are going to rush out to vote, to pull the lever for D's after what we've seen over the past year and for nearly 5 months. Kelly Smith says 100%. All right. Leslie Fishman says we have options. Vanji Anru agrees. Kelly says Biden lied. Oh shit! I have to reload my thing. So what do we got going on here on Twitter? Okay, looks like we're okay on Twitter. Let me do a quick refresh. So yeah, guys, I just want to pound the point home. In the 17-year history of our organization, this week has never been more important. This week, we need to hit our senators very hard on Twitter mostly and tell them as strongly as we can, but call them also. Go to our website, click on the Call Your Senator tab. Call both of your senators, both Democrats and Republicans. Call them and tell them in the strongest possible terms to co-sponsor and fight for S2598. Even if they don't do it, they're listening to us. And that pressure could be make or break for us, ladies and gentlemen. Could be make or break. So, yeah, do that. And remember, guys, if we don't get bankruptcy back, we're not going to see anything meaningful from Joe Biden. It's just not going to happen. We are not going to see meaningful student loan cancellation as long as bankruptcy is gone. It's just not going to happen. So Leslie Fishman says, insane. Kelly Smith is 47. Kelly says he owes more than his house thanks to interest. Right, exactly. This is a weaponized, viciously predatory lending system. We don't have to take it, guys. Leslie Fishman rightly points out, in all honesty, it's become a mental health issue. Yeah, for sure, Leslie. You know, we've documented very many suicides, believe it or not, in the years that we've been doing this, like 6 or 7 or so. These are all very tough stories. And one can only imagine how much worse that's gotten and how much worse it threatens to become. Hey, Terry Dodd says, I really hope this gets passed next week. Do those daily actions and spread the word if you want this to go away. Exactly, Terry. Thank you. I'm glad that you're on the good side. I wasn't sure what your earlier comment was alluding to. I've kind of got my battle gear on because I've been doing battle all day long on Twitter and other places from the haters. Sorry if I misconstrued your earlier comment. Listen to Terry, ladies and gentlemen. He knows what's talking about. He knows what he is talking about. Talk to anybody who's over a certain age on this group, like 50 or something like that. I don't know how old Terry is, but talk to anyone who's been stuck with these loans for more than like a decade or a couple decades. And they will tell you, you need to be helping us fight. You just do. Nobody is going to pull your weight for you on this group. We don't have a marketing department, guys. We don't have a staff. We don't have a budget, really. Our budget is like a couple grand a month to literally keep our lights on over here and personal donations. We don't have any of that stuff. We don't have infrastructure. What we have are people, and that means you. I'm a person, but I'm only one person. Ed's a person. He's only one person. Leslie, Terry, they're only one people, which is, can't ask for anything more than that, I guess. But, but all we have is people. You know, we people, normal people, are fighting this machine, and we're all we've got. Sometimes we get lucky and we get a break in the media on 60 Minutes or New York Times, or a couple of weeks ago we were on Fox News, which is good. But we cannot count on the media to solve this problem for us. We certainly can't count on the politicians to solve this unless we push them. So we're all we've got, guys. I'm kid you not. I never thought this fight would be going more than a few years when I started student loan justice back in 2005. It's been 17 years, guys. 17 years. This can't go on. And the one thing that's been missing is you, not you personally, but people owning this problem, shaking off the chains, stopping running around with your tail in between your legs, afraid of this ridiculous, nonsensical, and now catastrophically failed lending scam, and helping us. It's literally just that simple. So yeah, all we have are people, but all we need are people at the same time. We are knocking on the door, guys, knocking on the door. We're so close. Hey, Terry. Yeah, right. I hear you, man. I totally hear you. And by the way, so you all know, people over the age of 50 now outnumber the people under the age of 25 with student loan debt. It's the craziest statistic in the world. You never hear it reported. People over 50 outnumber people under 25 with student loan debt, and they owe 300% more than the younger crowd. So that's because of people like V, that person I mentioned earlier, borrowed $26,000, has repaid $100,000, owes $200,000. That's the kind of stories we're seeing, and I'm telling you, the older people are the ones being hurt the worst. And they're the ones with the highest balances, by the way. It's not these rich young doctors and lawyers. Those people tend to refinance their loans out of the federal program, by the way. The people with the highest loan balances are older people. This lending system is just so failed. It's just so catastrophically failed. You guys have no idea. Hey, Vanji says, write to New York Times. I wrote an email to the New York Times just this morning, as a matter of fact. The New York Times was playing on the buzzword of the inflation beast. In typical New York Times fashion, they were sort of politely suggesting that canceling student loans would cause inflation. It's disgusting. If you write an email to the daily, what's it called? Daily something, at NewYorkTimes.com. Anyway, find the article. It's a very hot article today. Daily something at NewYorkTimes.com. Daily guide? I don't know. You write them an email and say, the New York Times has been doing terrible journalism on this topic for the past 10 years. You all have never even reported on S2598. And the body of the New York Times' work over the past more than 10 years, quite frankly, has been disgustingly pro-lender, pro-establishment. And I rarely even post New York Times articles on our group anymore because literally it's propaganda, guys. It's propaganda. Shame on New York Times. So, okay, guys, I've gone a while tonight. But let me just say, if you forget everything I said here tonight, remember at least do our daily actions. Everything comes down to bankruptcy. Whether you would ever or never file for bankruptcy does not matter. That's not the point. You sitting there, if you want your loans canceled, if you want to break on interest, whatever solution you need, all of that starts with the return of bankruptcy, with the passage of our bill, S2598. So go to our website and do at least a month worth of daily actions. That's the least you can do. And they go really quick, by the way. It's like Twitter stuff. You can probably do a month of daily actions in 15 or 20 minutes. But beyond that, do something else. I don't know. Think for yourself. Be clever. Be creative. We have some very smart people in this group, I happen to know. Call a reporter, call a newspaper or a television station. Maybe call your Uncle Larry, who's a producer at your local radio station. Have them do a story on this problem. We can provide them people to interview from across the country, every media market, with extremely compelling stories to tell. Like that person I mentioned earlier who borrowed 26,000, repaid 100,000, still owes 200,000. These people are willing to be interviewed. So there's a million things you can do. If you have a Republican governor in your state, if you can convince your governor to stand up, and they should, every Republican governor in the South, for example, should be standing up and saying, Mr. President, cancel these loans. I will not let my state be conquered and enslaved by this big government, some would say socialistic debt. Like, if you can get even one Republican governor to stand up and say what's obvious, shouldn't be even that hard of a sell. If you can do that, that's pretty much game over. You know, when Ron DeSantis of Florida stands up and says, Mr. President, enough. I will not let the great state of Florida become some sort of a serf vassal state to the federal government under this unconstitutional lending scam. Cancel the loans. When a guy like Ron DeSantis stands up and says that, that's it. That's game over. We win. So one person could make that happen. It could be you. This could be your calling. This could be your mission in life. And as corny as it may sound, guys, the country actually needs you. This group right here, we're the guys that started that petition calling for cancellation by executive order. Nobody was talking about that before this group. Our bankruptcy bill, upon which pretty much everything rests, would not exist but for the efforts of the people in this group. So we've got some potential massive world-saving superheroes here on this group. And I'm actually not even really kidding there. It only takes one person. And that person could be you. And we need you. And the country needs you. And believe it or not, tens or hundreds of millions of people who are going to follow in our footsteps need you. You know, this is the worst, most dangerous injustice I've pretty much ever seen domestically in this country. So people aren't getting murdered. I don't understand that. But this is the biggest financially threatening thing ever to visit the shores of the United States. And on that, I believe that strongly. Because if they can do to other loans what they did to student loans, we could be living in or maybe not living, this could be a slave, essentially an enslaved nation 20, 30 years from now. You know, they could do what they did to student loans to medical debt. And I'm already hearing whispers about it. That could happen. And at that point, there's no limit to what else they can take bankruptcy away from and play the very same trick that they played on us with. I think the grammar on that was correct. I'm not sure. I have to rewind this one. But yeah, guys, this is the camel's nose under the tent. There is a universe of terrible things hiding behind this curtain. We cannot let this injustice stand. So you're fighting for more than just yourself. You're fighting for your state, your country. Tens of hundreds of millions of people are going to follow in our footsteps. Maybe even billions of people if you really want to get in that. I agree. That's kind of dramatic. But guys, I'm telling you, much is riding on this. Every generation has their war, it would seem. I'd say this is our war, and you got to fight. You have to fight. What else are you going to do? Sit there and take it and lead the rest of your life with your tail in between your legs? There's nothing good about that. That's not good for you. It's not good for the country. Not good for anybody. We need you fighting. And this is a battle very easily won. I'm more optimistic today than I've ever been in the 17-year history of our organization. But we've got to push it along this last thing because, guys, I don't want any more time added onto this sentence for us. I want these loans gone. I want them gone. I want to take this thing behind me and throw it in the garbage can. Seriously. You know, we're not trying to build an empire here. We're trying to solve a problem. So, all right, guys, well, hang in there. Check back every day for the rest of this week. Do our daily actions. It's the least you can do. We need you. I'm trying to think of what else I can say to make that fucking clear to you. Pardon my French. Very important, guys. We need you. If ever you were going to help, if ever you were going to fight this battle, which is your battle, if ever you were going to, it's this coming week, today, tomorrow, through Friday, and quite frankly, maybe even beyond, if I'm being honest. Never has it mattered so much. So, okay, guys, I'm out. Ed will be back tomorrow. I will be back on Wednesday. Daily actions. Go to our website. We're glad you're here. I can't wait to see you again. I can't wait to get these loans gone. So good luck in your efforts. Godspeed. See you on Wednesday. God bless everybody.